This is the Bahamas Tonight, Northern Edition.
Bahamas. I'm Shashina Will-Parkinson. As always, it is so great to have you with us. Topping news this evening, the Supreme Court dismissing wrongful and unfair dismissal claims by 36 current and former managers of the Grand LUCAYAN Hotel. The ruling by Justice Petra Adderley denied virtually all claims by the Bahamas Hotel Managerial Association and its members stemming from the Grand LUCAYAN Board's decision to terminate most of the workforce in June 2020 in accordance with the terms of the sales agreement with ITM and Royal Caribbean. Tonight, the chairman of LUCAYAN Renewal Holdings, the special purpose vehicle managing the resort, and attorney for the Bahamas Hotel Managerial Association, Obi Ferguson, are weighing in on the ruling. Italia Hall has more. According to reports, Justice Petra Adderley dismissed the case brought by 3 managers because they had been retained by the Grand LUCAYAN and are still working there, while 3 Bahamas Hotel Managerial union member who did not correctly send a deed of release is Kirkland Russell, its president. Former Grand LUCAYAN head chef Justice Hannah Adderley ruled that he was not released because of redundancy, but the temporary cessation of the Grand LUCAYAN's business due to the global pandemic. As a result, Russell's wrongful and unfair dismissal claims, as well as his bid to be reinstated, all fell away. Now, chairman of the LUCAYAN Renewal Holdings, Michael Scott, calling the ruling a victory for a common sense of sanity.
Because they had never had a claim, they had no entitlement to recognition, because the management agreement had expired a long time ago. There was no issue as to redundancy, and the court found quite properly that they had been fairly, in fact, generously compensated.
He says it is his hope that the board can now move on
and stop having my time, wasted with this kind of what I consider to be nonsense. And we ought not, none of us, to lose sight of a very important fact, which is that the people of this country are paying the bill for this misuse of the process of the court.
Our ZNS News team also spoke with the attorney for the Bahamas Hotel Managerial Association, Obi Ferguson.
We're going to appeal. We will appeal ASAP in the interest of the law and in the interest of the workers at Freeport.
Now, you may recall that the LUCAYAN Renewal Holdings Board, headed by Michael Scott, dismissed 33 middle managers represented by the BHMA in June of last year. The termination exercise wrapped up in September. Now, some $3.3 million was allocated for the necessary payouts. Italia Hall, ZNS Network News. In other news, the country's budget debate continues in the House of Assembly. Today, the former Minister of Finance and Member of Parliament for East Grand Bahama presenting on the fiscal budget, hopes for Grand Bahama and even some disappointments in the constituency. In his last budget communication in Parliament, the former Minister of Finance and Member of Parliament for East Grand Bahama noting that this fiscal budget is in line with what was previously reported for the country's historic budget deficit.
For 2021-2022, $955 million. For 22-23, $331 million. You see, we're coming towards fiscal consolidation. For 2023-2024, $210 million. And 2024-2025, $73 million.
He says there is no surprise in the country's figures, adding that if anyone promises a quick turnaround, they are simply selling dreams.
Importantly, however, the bottom line planned overall deficit is in line with the strategy report, coming in at a budgeted $951 million, versus the forecast in the strategy report of $955 million. So where's the mischief, Mr. Speaker? Well, the truth be told, there is no mischief. The Ministry of Finance has presented a budget based upon the realities of today's circumstances.
The Member of Parliament also speaking to the island of Grand Bahama.
I'm pleased that the Ministry of Education has included funding for the desperately needed planned comprehensive school in East End, Grand Bahama. Thank you, Minister. As a part of that plan, can I also ask that the old school building in High Rock be considered for demolition, as it is a safety hazard? Alternatively, the unsafe buildings can be removed and the remaining structures redeveloped for community use. I'm also pleased at the inclusion of the $19 million for the commencement of the new tower at the Rand Memorial Hospital, a desperately needed addition, as bed shortages are a constant refrain by residents.
But he says he agrees with the Member of Parliament for Pine Ridge, Frederick McAlpine, adding that an oncology center should have been added to the Rand Memorial Hospital.
The cost of this life-saving treatment is just too expensive for residents and their families when it is available to them in Nassau.
When it comes to the rebuilding of East Grand Bahama, he shared these concerns with the DRA.
But when one considers the cost allocated to continued debris management, to administration of the program, the cost to erect and provide 40 residents and their families with some accommodation is insignificant.
While noting that more attention must also be given to these areas.
No attention has been paid to the docks at Swings Key and Waterkey. These are wooden docks, Mr. Speaker. Both are fishing communities and have necessary passenger ferry traffic. I cannot understand the inaction in restoring these vital pieces of infrastructure. The cost pales in comparison to a bridge or a concrete dock. Yet, the elderly, the sick, and the young must negotiate their way onto boats every day and risk slip and fall. Well, we are now into week 2 of the 2021-2022 hurricane season. With that in mind, some of the critical agencies and organizations on Grand Bahama are doing their part to ensure that the island is prepared in the event of a storm. Tonight, one of those organizations, the Rotary Club, is sharing their hurricane preparedness plan. Manager of Rotary Water Plan says that they are fully prepared and is sharing some of the changes that were implemented following Hurricane Dorian. Natalia Hall reports. The Rotary Water Plant, located near the Hawksville community, has been fully operational since 2007. Now, this plant was responsible for providing thousands of Grand Bahamians with fresh water following Hurricane Dorian. Now, plant manager Mike Stafford says the plant is fully prepared in the event of a storm, but he says this year things will be done a bit differently due to COVID-19.
In the past, we would have 8 self-service fill stations out back, and now what we're going to do is we're going to reduce that to only 2 on each side, which will spread people out a little bit. And then we've also got a tap stand that we've acquired, and we will put this out away from the building a little bit, and this will help spread people out a little bit. We also are well stocked in hand sanitizer. We also have a new system where one of our volunteers, who will be wearing a mask and gloves, will be spraying bleach on each tap stand valve, which when people touch after every use. He says after Hurricane Dorian, for the first 8 days, the water plant was the only source of water on the island. He adds that some 300,000 gallons of water was distributed over 2.5 months. And we were overwhelmed. It was hard for us to keep up. So our district donated us a second machine, and you can see it all hooked up here on the wall. And It's elevated because we actually had a flood in the water plant after Dorian, during Dorian, I guess. So what we've done is we've elevated all of the equipment off the ground, so if we do get another flood like Dorian, which heaven forbid we won't, we're a little bit more redundant by having it up off the ground.
Now, the second machine provides the water plant with a capacity of 800,000 gallons of water that can be provided during a 24-hour period.
We've also added and upgraded our trailers. You would have seen our little trailers with the tanks on them. In the past, they had a 275-gallon tank. Going forward, they're going to have a 315-gallon tank. We've also acquired two 500-gallon tank trailers, and this will be large capacity. And as you would have known from the past storms, all of them, we're very proactive, not reactive at the water plant here. So we already had water in all of the shelters that were needed. And these 500-gallon tankers, they'll be good to restock those.
The plant manager is urging residents to begin thinking about their hurricane preparedness plan. He says supplies are necessary and at least 1 gallon of water is needed for each person in a household.
Because one of the worst things is after a storm is when you go out to try and find these things. The lines are long, people are hectic, traffic is crazy. Just prepare now, and you don't have to do it all at once before the storm when you see it. Get a couple cans of food and hide them, put them away. Each week you go to the store, get a couple of this, couple of that. Next month we have a tax holiday on hurricane supplies, so you can buy things like sandbags and jerry cans. While we have free water to give away, we don't have jugs, so you're going to need to come to the water plant with your own jugs, and we'll refill them if they need sanitizing, where you have bleach and stuff to sanitize them as well.
Italia Hall, ZNS Network News.
In other news, this is the beach season in the country, and as the temperatures heat up, more Bahamian families will be heading to the beach. Water safety is an issue of concern. Officials of the YMCA are sharing tips tonight to keep us all safe this summer. Our Jay Philippe has this report.
It is the summer months, which means it's beach season. However, residents should consider their safety as a priority before going for a swim. Beaches on Grand Bahama are expected to be busy in the weeks ahead. According to Karen Johnson, YMCA swim coach and certified lifeguard, the summer months is a time when drowning accidents are common. She says rip currents is one of the main reasons for drowning because of powerful narrow channels of fast-moving water. She adds that panic swimmers often try to counter a rip current by swimming straight back to shore, putting themselves at risk of drowning because of fatigue.
Anytime you see seaweed or an object moving quickly out, be careful of that area. Okay, the current is strong there, and if someone gets caught in that, you can be pulled out and be pulled out very quickly. Now, how can you swim against that? You cannot swim against a rip current. You have to allow yourself to go all the way out, however far it's going to take you, and then you swim parallel.
Johnson offered this tip for parents who often accompany their children at the beach.
Don't allow the kids to be in the water, and then you're all the way back up on the wall. The distance is too far. Anything could happen within that space that you've created between yourself and where the kids are actually playing.
Johnson says drownings peak in the warmer seasons as people flock to the water for recreation. She warns that the consumption of alcohol while at the beach is not a wise decision.
Parents, children, and alcohol is not a good mix. It's a remedy for disaster. When you take your children on the beach, you need to allocate yourself complete and utter surveillance of those children in the water. You cannot allow anything to distract you. Your phone, someone passing by, because it takes a split second, and then you're in trouble.
Johnson also says that it's important to be proactive in relation to swimming to avoid possible mishaps.
There are many Learn to Swim programs here on Grand Bahama. Be sure your child is enrolled in a program. Be sure that this summer your child learns how to save his or her life.
I'm Jay Philippe, ZNS Network News.
The Immigration Department hauling a citizen of Ghana before the court today for breaches to the Immigration Act. 48-year-old Emmanuel Nathaniel King-Batsius appearing before Deputy Chief Magistrate Debbie Ferguson to answer charges of entering into a fraudulent marriage. The particulars are that on June 9, 2021, while at Grand Bahama, he was found to have willfully entered into a fraudulent marriage with Bahamian Jane Julie Andrews in New Providence. summons for the purpose of obtaining a resident spouse permit from the Director of Immigration under false pretenses. The defendant pled guilty and was ordered to be deported. The marriage took place in May 2011. King Batsius was also charged with misleading an immigration officer. Particulars are that on May 31st of this year, while in Grand Bahama, King Batsius did willfully mislead immigration officers by providing them with false information during an interview and home inspection relative to an application he submitted seeking to obtain a resident spouse permit from the Director of Immigration, knowing it to be untrue. King Batsius pled guilty as charged and was ordered to pay $2,500 or in default serve 1 year at the Department of Corrections. King Batsius was remanded in police custody pending payment of his court-imposed fine. Now, once the fine is paid, he will be turned over to immigration for deportation. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this.